From the southeastern corner of western North Carolina, this is Folklore. I'm your host, James Hernician, and I've been thinking a lot about why that song, Rich Men from North of Richmond, hit a nerve for so many people last month. If you haven't heard it, get out from under your rock and Google it. Musically, it's just wagon wheel warmed over and mostly forgettable, but the lyrics were written to go viral at this particular point in American political history. It's at once a lament for the days when rich people were only a lot wealthier and more powerful than the rest of us, instead of obscenely more wealthy and powerful, and a rant about undeserving welfare bums with a smattering of conspiratorial QAnon nonsense thrown in for good measure, so to speak. Whatever you want to say about whatever it is the singer-songwriter Oliver Anthony was trying to express, it's really all about the evaporation of the American dream. And the American dream is just that, a dream. A big part of the gap between the reality and the fantasy is the cost of housing. Who can afford to buy a house or even find a decent place to rent anymore? From western North Carolina to coastal California, the problem is everywhere. Here's a maddening piece of information. There are only 4 big cities in the U.S. where buying a house makes more economic sense than renting: Detroit, Philadelphia, Cleveland, and Houston. Everywhere else, investing in a home is way out of reach for just about everyone who doesn't make most of their money from surfing the stock market. I've been planning an episode devoted to the affordable housing problem since I began this podcast, but I couldn't figure out a new angle. There are plenty of people working on the problem, of course. Here in Polk County, we have Outreach, which has built 4 rental homes in Green Creek, and there's a new 70-unit affordable apartment building going up at the junction of the 74 and 108. Meanwhile, the Housing Assistance Nonprofit Corporation of Henderson County has just expanded to serve Polk County. There are good stories there, I'm sure, but I wanted to talk about the bigger picture. Then, a couple of weeks ago, a friend of mine who recently opened a new office for Looking Glass Realty in Saluda invited anyone interested in affordable, or to use the new politically sensitive term, workforce housing, to meet with representatives of housing assistance. It may seem a little odd for a real estate agent whose income is directly proportional to the value of the deals they broker to be promoting affordable housing. But if you know Amy Wood, and we've been friends for the better part of 2 decades, it's not really all that surprising. If you stick around for the next 40 minutes, you'll find out why. We talked on her porch in Saluda. Amy Wood, welcome to Folklore.
Thank you, James.
It's been a long time. We've been talking about this subject for months, but the issue's not going away. So let's talk about affordable housing. But before we get to that, tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name's Amy Wood. I opened Looking Glass Realty in February. It's a real estate firm here in Saluda. I've been a realtor since 2004. Took some time off to raise girls. And I also serve as the membership director for the Saluda Business Association.
So you've got your fingers in a lot of pies. You've done a lot of things, but we're talking about affordable housing because this seems to be pretty big priority for you these days.
Well, yes. And I actually think it's a priority for realtors nationwide. In fact, it was on the cover of our last real estate magazine.
I think there's a piece in that magazine that the listeners really would find informative. Can you just read it?
Yes. So it's actually talking to realtors, saying realtors are tackling supply and affordability challenges to bring down barriers for would-be home buyers. Right? So this is a national magazine. This is the National Association of Realtors. They're saying to realtors, you live with the challenges every day. Low inventory, high prices, and more recently, rising interest rates have dramatically cut into buyers' spending power. Soaring rents and other factors make it difficult for many people to save or qualify for their first home. Meanwhile, local regulations combined with material and labor shortages are suppressing the production of new homes. It's a nationwide issue, but for me, I've been part of this community for a long time. And I think that we've come to a time where as a community, we need to work on this issue for the sake of the community. So yeah, as part of one of the things that I want to do moving forward with my real estate career is helping address this issue, as well as being an amazing realtor who gets more money for property than some properties deserve because I'm good at what I do, right?
Well, that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, because there's plenty of people in this country and other countries, it's actually an international issue, right? That there's experts on affordable housing, and there are policy papers being written, and there are legislative initiatives in all kinds of states to try to do something about affordable housing, because not enough people in most places in this country can afford to live in the kind of place they want to live. And yet the problem doesn't go away, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So I thought it would be really interesting to talk to somebody who we usually don't consult to talk about affordable housing, which are real estate agents. And so do you have any insight into the scope of the problem in Polk County? Like, what's the situation here and maybe in the neighboring counties when it comes to the gap between what people need and what they can afford?
So the scope of the problem right now is huge. For example, in the last 3 years in the state of North Carolina, homes have appreciated almost 50%.
That's great if you're thinking about selling your house.
And it's really not good if you're thinking about buying. So I actually took my house that I bought in 2016 and used the Federal Housing Finance Agency HPI calculator. And what this does is it has the purchase quarter that you bought something and the price, and then your selling quarter, right? So Noah and I, we bought our house for $226,500. And that was the third quarter in 2016. Today, that house by appreciation would be worth $4,033,970. A total increase in appreciation of 79.7%. Of that increase, the last 3 years from the first quarter of 2020 to the first quarter of 2023, that house appreciated 47.9%.
So it turns out that real estate is a good investment.
Real estate is always a great investment. And I'm very grateful that for years I've been telling locals that they should probably consider not selling to save their land for their kids, that this area is being discovered, and that they and their kids may not be able to afford to live here. And for years before this rapid increase in values that have happened in the last 3 years and are still continuing, we've increased 4% since the first quarter, right?
So we get the idea. Houses are appreciating, obviously at a much faster rate than people's wages are going up.
Yes. Yes. The median house value in Polk County right now is $435,000, which is actually more today than in Henderson County, which that's the first time I've seen that. So Polk County, and then of that specifically, Saluda is a place where we are 10 to 20% higher than the areas around us, right? So especially in Saluda, I see this.
And as you were talking about earlier, there are plenty of people in Polk County who work in our restaurants, who teach our children in schools, who work as personnel in banks and other similar industries. They're not making the kind of money that will make them eligible for a mortgage.
Right. So if you take today's median price, like in Polk County, right, of $435,000 at 7.4 interest rate, 30-year fixed, right, your payment is $3,012 a month with no PMI, no taxes and insurance. I don't know about you, James, but with that, that's about $4,000 a month.
Yeah.
In maintaining a home, like the average home right now with the current interest rates.
Okay, averages are a little bit tricky.
And this is actually median, so it's better than the average.
Means or averages are really can be very deceptive because they don't really reflect the range, right? It's okay to have a high average cost of housing if there are a sufficient number of homes available at the low end, right?
So this is actually the median where you stack everything up and you go, what's the middle, right? So it's a seller's market in Polk County and up to 700,000, right? And when you get into the lower price ranges, like 300,000, you go below 3, at least in Saluda, you're buying a house that has a lot of problems with it, or it's a manufactured home right now. Not so much when you go down the mountain in Columbus and Tryon, because it's 5 to 10 degrees warmer there. And so we don't have as many vacationers, second home people that are driving the prices up, right? People are willing to pay more to come up the mountain. But if we look at what has sold this year in Saluda, let's say, so we've had 18 homes that have sold under 400,000. And we've had, of those 18, we've had 4 that are less, that are in the high 2s. And we've had 1 manufactured double wide that was under 200,000.
So not a lot of numbers there.
No. And what's happening is when you do have a house in this price range, your teacher usually doesn't have cash, right? So these houses are selling quickly and they're having, 15 offers, and 5 to 8 of those offers are cash. And a teacher that's trying to buy a house, they're putting in maybe 8, 9 offers before they actually get a home, if they get a home.
And North Carolina is in the bottom third of the country when it comes to starting teacher pay.
Yes, we are. So I actually looked this up. That starting salary is for a teacher with no experience is $35,000, right? And in Polk County, we're really lucky in that our administration keeps themselves kind of thin. So they actually end up paying a little bit more than the counties around us, because they know the importance of having teachers in small class size. There's more teachers, smaller classes, and higher salaries, but it's around 36 for a starting teacher here.
So if you're making between $35,000 and $40,000 a year, how much of a house can you afford to buy?
The real answer is you cannot afford a house. I mean, that is really, truly that you're part of that missing middle where free economics is not working. And we have to, as realtors, be educated to identify that I'm not going to be able to really help you. We need to get you to an organization like Housing Assistance, where you can get a USDA loan and they can do a project where they build a house, a really nice house, like the ones they're building near Green Creek that I went to see. So Housing Assistance, they just started a project in Polk County, and I toured a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house that they built for $265,000, right? I almost cried, James, because if that house was in Saluda, I would sell that house for $500,000 today. So I was surprised at first, like, this is really nice housing. And then my husband said, affordable housing or workforce housing doesn't need to look like high density, not nice housing. It can look like a really nice house. And they're doing this because they do them in bulk and they have a product that I didn't know about. I think you're supposed to be able to pay 30% of your income on a house, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, that's like $10,000 or $12,000 a year of your income goes towards housing. So that's really only $1,000 a month, right? If you're only making $35,000 or $40,000,
right? And what kind of house could you buy with a mortgage right now? A regular mortgage? Let's just see, because honestly, I don't know.
Well, I think you just made the case that you probably can't afford to buy a house, not in Saluda, and it would be very difficult down the mountain in Columbus and Tryon and Green Creek still, right? Because there's just not a lot of houses in that range. So who qualifies for affordable housing?
More people than you'd think. So you wake up in the morning, you go get a cup of coffee, then you go drop your kids off at school, then you go to the pharmacy and pick up a prescription. And then, maybe someone comes and visits your elderly mom at home. You've just interacted with 4 people that would all qualify for affordable housing.
Okay, so what are you doing about this as a realtor?
Well, first, I am, I guess, part of the problem in that I'm doing my job as a realtor, which gets people more money and attracts people to come here and stuff. So in the past, I have been able to tear up listing agreements when renters are willing to buy from owners, right? And I've been able to help businesses buy housing for their staff, because that's where we're at in Saluda is if you want to have staff be able to work, you have to provide housing for them.
Well, no, let me just stop you right there for a second, because we're going to go back to this meeting that you hosted at Looking Glass
a few
weeks ago.
I was about to get to that too.
And so the executive director of housing assistance, Kristen Dunn, said, and I quote, "We have a problem when business owners have to buy housing for their staff."
Yes, we do. So one of the things that I'm doing is trying to educate myself and the realtors in my firm about workforce housing, right? How to identify buyers, how to identify sellers that homes could be used for workforce housing. And in that, I asked Kristen Dunn with the Housing Assistance Corporation to come speak to our office. And I had our realtors there and also some stakeholders in the community. And it was wonderful.
Well, it was also a bit surprising to me. I don't know if I'd ever heard of real estate agents hosting an event about workforce housing before. Again, usually it's the people who like the Housing Assistance Corporation, which is a nonprofit based in Hendersonville, but it serves both Polk and Henderson counties, right?
True. And they've just started serving Polk County and doing some projects here. So first and foremost, I'm a community member. Been here since 1997, seen a whole generation come and go. And so this is it's important to me that we have our community, and a thriving community has people that live and work and play, and then their kids can live and work and play, right? And serve each other. Yeah, I care deeply about it, and everybody in my office cares deeply about it. And I would say it's come to such a crisis that, even the National Association of Realtors magazine lead cover article last month was about affordable housing. If we have a whole generation that cannot buy a house, that's not good for us either.
Well, I think that there's also the effect on folks who might not be embedded members of the community, but they are trying to work here. One of the things that I have found really unusual in the last few months or in a year or so on Facebook, social media posts, is restaurants will be saying, "I'm sorry, we're not going to be open tomorrow. Staffing problems." And it used to be COVID, like half their staff would be able to COVID. Today, it's not. They just don't have staff. We have two really good restaurants in Saluda. Neither of them are open on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Why is that? Staffing. Right.
And I spoke with Emily at the Purple Onion, who I've shown many houses looking for workforce housing. And she said, her staff, except for maybe two, do not live in Saluda. They live in Hendersonville. They live in Columbus, Tryon. In Rutherfordton, you can get a lot more for your money. So we have a lot of people commuting from Rutherford County.
But there are restaurants in Columbus who have the same problem.
Yes, there are. Yeah.
So,
and in Tryon, too.
But is buying a house something that wait staff should be thinking about? I mean, shouldn't they be thinking about rentals?
Finding an affordable rental right now is also really, really hard to do.
And there's a lot of reasons for that. One, I guess, is simply that there are other things you can do with your house and rent them long term. Other things that make more money.
Right.
If you don't want to live in it, you can rent it out as an Airbnb or a vacation rental by owner and charge 4 times as much.
Exactly. Yes. But also in 10 years, we may be in a totally different situation. We're in a very unique situation. In 2008, when we had the crisis, most of your contractors went and got other jobs. And building houses, it's hard work. Right. So we stopped building houses, and then those workers building houses didn't come back. And so we have, I think, 10 years of inventory to make up with building houses. So that's one thing. We just don't have enough newer houses. Another issue that makes it so that our prices are staying high is that if you refinanced, which I hope most of you did during COVID, you're going, you know what? Do I really want to buy a new house and sell my house right now? Because I'm locked in at like 2.7 rate. And if I buy a new house, it's going to be, today's rate is 7.4. So people that have them are holding them because of these really great low interest rates. And then we also have, for demand wise, we just got high-speed fiber optic internet in a lot of places in Polk County. So people that have had not been able to move here because of work can now move here and live full time and work not in our restaurants, online from their home. And they're moving from big cities and other places where houses are more expensive and going, what a deal, and coming here and buying houses. And then we have what some people call the silver tsunami, our baby boomers. And they also are going, you know what? I want to have a house near my kids. So I'm going to have a house over here. And then I'm going to have a house over here. And some baby boomers, they got 3 or 4 houses. And a lot of those baby boomers, they have cash. So here you are, you're a house that's coming up on the market. And you've got, just a lot of interest. And there's not many of you. And I did not even mention corporations that are coming and buying house like stock, and they're all for profit. And fortunately, we have not seen that. But in Greenville, that's becoming a real issue. And they come in and they offer 60 grand over asking price. And they just know that this area is about to boom. And then, James, why I'm doing this podcast, which I've got to say, I'm not an expert. Let me just say that again. I did not want to do this because I'm not an expert, is because I see if the Saluda grade trail comes, we're going to have even more interest. And I do want that trail to come. And I want to prepare for it so that our town can house our teachers and our firefighters and our police officers and some of our restaurant workers.
And some of the new employees who we brought by the new businesses that come because of the trail.
Yes. And, some of the employees that worked like at the barbecue, they worked there for 25 years. To ask someone to come to work 5 days a week and work 8-hour shifts and not be able to get a home, I just don't like that, right? Like, one thing I like about our small community is that we're small, so everybody interacts, We got our really rich people and some would say like really poor people. It doesn't really matter. We're all part of this community and we care about each other, which is why I think so many people have been and are doing things to address this issue. And I think we can tackle it, but we need to work together. And it's not just the realtors that need to do this. It's our city governments, our policies. Well, we can talk about that.
Well, we can, but I do want to talk a little bit more about how a realtor, who again is tasked with sometimes maximizing the value of a house when it's sold. I mean, you also serve buyers, so you're trying to get them a good deal. I've always thought it's kind of a tricky job. You're serving 2 masters sometimes. And if you throw the added pressure of trying to improve the affordable housing situation, that's a lot for a realtor to juggle. So what can a realtor like yourself and the rest of the industry in Polk County, what can they do to play a role in changing things?
I see as realtors being educated about workforce housing and specifically loan tools that can be used. So first, learning how to identify buyers that we can say, we can't really help you, but guess what? Housing assistance or outreach can. And so that number right now is if you are a family of 4 in Polk County and your income is about $57,000 or less.
For a household income.
For a household income. And so a teacher, I think, would definitely qualify for this too. As a single, we can send you to housing assistance where they can qualify you for a USDA loan. And okay, this is where I was doing it wrong. So when I used to go talk to sellers, cash is king and conventional loans. And those USDA, FHA, VA loans, let's just not bother with them because they're a bother. Truth is, I didn't truly understand them and why I need to educate my seller about them, and then let my seller decide if they want to have someone get a loan like that on their house. And knowing now what I know, I think most sellers would say, yes, let's do the USDA loan.
So in the past, it was kind of like a path of least resistance. Let's just take the cash because fewer forms to fill out, fewer things to get reviewed and approved. USDA loan, it's going to take some time. The USDA, folks who don't know, that's the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which is supplying loans to people in rural agricultural oriented areas, right?
Right. So that family that has about $57,000 in income, I go, hey, you can't buy much. Let's send you over to Gregory with housing assistance. They can get a USDA loan, 100% financing, no PMI, private mortgage insurance, because you're not putting down the necessary amount for your loan, right? So usually, I think it's 20%. So, and, a teacher's family probably doesn't have that. So they'll give 100% financing with no PMI. And then whatever the interest rate is, the prime rate, so 7.4, their interest rate is going to be half of that.
So it's almost like back to the good old days.
Exactly. Right. So for buyers, that is an amazing tool that this county gets to use. I think the city of Asheville, they don't qualify for it, but we do. I didn't know about this. I've been doing this for a really long time and I didn't understand it. So I think one of my roles is to educate you all out there about, hey, if you fall in this category, let's get you to the right people. And then after that meeting, a bunch of us reached out to the Hendersonville Board of Realtors, who I hope has housing assistance present to all of the realtors. Because if all of us are educated and we know these things, how to identify buyers, what loan tools can help our buyers, and then we're able to explain those loan tools to sellers so that sellers, when they have a listing that could be purchased, we can say, here are your options. And then the seller can choose and say, this is a USDA loan. The extra effort is that it may take 60 days to close instead of your 30 to 45.
That doesn't seem like a big difference to me.
It's not a big difference. It's not. And I think a lot of sellers would be open to that tool had I explained it in the past.
Okay. When did you first get your real estate license?
I got it in 2004.
So that's 19 years ago. All right. So how many other realtors out there really have been spending most of their careers not aware of these kind of tools?
I would say 90% of them. I mean, in truth, really. So, I was like one of the top agents out of 5,000 in Asheville. And, here I am, the broker in charge of a company. I will say that for the most part, I am working with higher end buyers. So I'm not working with your first time buyers.
But you'd like to work with first time buyers.
Really, for me, not really. It is not a fun job. You are going and writing offer after offer after offer, and you're not getting a house. It's frustrating. That is some hard work. My focus, James, honestly, is to educate people about it and, to help housing assistants find places where they can build homes, nice quality homes, and put people that we love and care about that actually come and work hard for us every day in. We're coming to that place, James, where agents are just knocking their heads against the wall. And there's another way, which is, cities saying, let's set aside this land for workforce housing. That's where we're at. We, as a government, as a community, even our for-profit builders, there's profit in this. We can make zoning so we can do more infill, walkable, multifamily houses. So I think that I don't really want to work in the free market with a first-time buyer. No, I would much rather get them a USDA loan, get them a house that's high quality, that's going to not just help them walk, but it's going to help them fly, right? Because today, my options are to sell them a really crappy house.
So we've actually covered all of the basic issues I wanted to address. But I don't think people still have a good idea of how all the pieces of the puzzle fit together. You, as a realtor, can do what you can to steer people towards the type of houses that are best suited for them. You can try to steer sellers in the same direction. But without governments, like you say, saying, okay, this part of the town really should be affordable housing, and we need more high density, walkable neighborhoods. We have to have that. We have to have government perhaps offering expanded versions of USDA loans. There's so many things that have to be done if we're going to solve this problem. Because you pointed out, there are multiple reasons for it. Still recovering from the subprime mortgage crisis, changing demographics. Polk County's been discovered. Hendersonville is creeping down 26 in one direction, and Greenville and Spartanburg creeping up in the other. It is, I would think, an interesting time to be a real estate agent, if anything else.
It is. The Saluda Community Land Trust, they were at this meeting that we had, right? So here they are preserving land, which I'm a huge fan of. And they have the word community in their name. And so, they're interested in, okay, let's set aside some land for some housing, because we want to preserve what we love. And in doing that, we really need to also build nice quality homes for that missing middle. And now actually it's not called affordable, because really even that housing is not what I would say affordable. It's workforce housing. It's about 30% of your income.
There's a housing complex going up down in Columbus, the Jasmine Apartments. Going to be 70 units designed for affordable folks. Okay, so rentals. The one-bedroom apartments will go for $435 to $930 per month. Two-bedroom apartments will range from $530 to $1,220, and three bedrooms for $610 to $1,300. That's pretty good.
That's fantastic.
Okay, this is an organization, a company that specializes in affordable housing, and they've had done similar projects up in Swannanoa and elsewhere in North Carolina, and they've come to Columbus, and I think they're going to be ready next year at some point. How big of an impact do you think 70 affordable apartments, 1 and 2 and 3 bedroom, will have on the Polk County market for affordable housing?
Not much, in that that doesn't also get people to house ownership. I think it helps your bank teller who's just graduated college, who's earning $33,000 a year. You can rent that apartment and actually save to buy something, which is wonderful, because rents are not in that price range around here. They're, what we would think of as a mortgage payment, about $1,000 to $2,000 in Saluda is your average rent. So that's wonderful, because then people can rent and they can save to buy a home. Our Polk County, for the most part, has a rural character, and high density housing is just not something that, except for like in the town, doesn't fit. So in keeping with our rural single family,
the basic character of the county.
Character, right? That's where these single family houses that are built at cost, and then the USDA loans and getting people in them, that's like the next step. So you can go rent there, save some money, or not save some money. But then eventually, when you can earn even more, get a single family house from housing assistance. I think Hope Village too, they're doing 13 units, right? I still have to go tour that village, but it's wonderful. And I believe those are rental units, not.
Yes, they are.
Okay. So still, we're starting to address some rental. None of it is in Saluda, where I live, work, and play.
So 70 units is going to help a bit, but we shouldn't say, okay, problem solved. You actually have to say things.
We should say, awesome. This is wonderful. We're going in the right direction.
Is there anything we didn't talk about, you think, people should know about what they can expect from real estate agents when it comes to this issue?
Well, I would say for sellers, we've also had the Saluda Community Land Trust come talk to us about preserving property. I feel like real estate agents, we need to be educated to get people to the right resources. So we're educated about preserving property, tax write-offs. And then also, if you have land that is next to a state-maintained road, USDA can build houses off of it. State or city-maintained road. So if you have a lot or some land, relatively flat, easy to build, that's a perfect place for workforce housing, which I guarantee it's going to look really nice. It's going to look like your other houses, but it's going to be housing our teachers.
All right. Well, I think that most of what you've said is optimistic in a sense that the industry seems to be coming around to realization that we are, as a country, facing a crisis situation. And this is not just something that affects California or New York. It affects us all. It affects when our restaurants can be open. It affects what kind of teachers we can attract to our schools. And just being aware of the situation is one thing, but the fact that real estate agents are starting to think differently about their role in the solution tells me that as long as people like yourself and others continue to work on it, maybe we can get to the place where we're not complaining about the price of rent and the price of housing all the time.
Definitely. Definitely, James.
All right. Thank you so very much. I know this has been something you care about deeply, and I really appreciate you spending the time with me.
Thank you, James.
And so ends another episode of Folklore. If you've got any ideas about where future episodes should be headed, just let me know by emailing jamesH@folklore.com. And please subscribe using whatever platform you're listening to this on. I also make posts on social media like Facebook and Instagram, but listeners can really help by spreading the word themselves. Thanks for listening.